Good afternoon, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you and call to order our Middlesex County Council meeting for Tuesday, November the 7th. We acknowledge that the land we stand upon today is the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenape peoples, who have longstanding relationships to the land, water, and region of southwestern Ontario. The local First Nations of this area include Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames First Nation, and Munsee Delaware Nation. We acknowledge the treaties that are specific to this area. Treaty 2, the McKee Purchase. Treaty 3, Between the Lakes Purchase. Treaty 6, London Township Purchase. Treaty 21, Longwoods Purchase, and Treaty 29, Huron Tract Purchase. We value the significant contributions both in the past and the present of local and regional First Nations of Turtle Island. And we acknowledge historic and ongoing injustices that Indigenous peoples endure in Canada. And we affirm our commitment to honoring Indigenous voices, nations, and cultures, and to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. As you can see, I am not wearing my county jacket today. November 15th is Wear Purple Day in support of the Shine a Light on Women Abuse campaign. And I would ask you that you put that in your calendar and wear purple on the 15th and encourage conversations with the people that you are with that day. We have all seen the statistics of the rise of intimate partner violence and femicide. These are troubling numbers and trends. We saw this during the pandemic when resources available to women were limited. The number of high-risk women seeking shelter increased through the pandemic as home situations became more and more abusive. The ability to seek out support was compromised with partners being at home and having more control of comings and goings, as well as controlling virtual access. We had hoped that as the pandemic restrictions eased, so would these trends. But sadly, that is not the case. But women are incredible creatures, and it has been well documented and studied that in the midst of crisis, women can cope quite well, balancing and managing many demands. Better with healthy supports, but we cope. As the crisis subsides, the influence of the increased stressors begin to surface, and we see the fallout on mental health and the need for ongoing support to navigate the many emotions and impacts of intimate partner violence and abuse. In Middlesex, women can be and are supported by the Women's Rural Resource Centre in Strathroy. At the WRRC, during the pandemic, they saw a 50% increase for women's counseling programs. In the children's counseling program that can be accessed by kids and caregivers, demand had increased by 45%. WRRC offers transition support as well, and they are seeing demands on housing, legal, and one-on-one supports with community clients increasing upwards of 50%. WRRC, for the most part, runs at full capacity and is having to refer women to other shelters outside of their home community, as requests for shelter space is far above their capacity. And this is just at WRRC in Strathroy, Middlesex County. But it is the same story across our region, our province, and our country. Middlesex County, through our social services and library departments, manages community supports through our Community Navigator program. Our Community Navigator, Josh Smith, is an expert on all of the services and programs around the county and can be your first step in finding which service could be the best fit for you or someone you know in crisis. As we know, Josh works out of Middlesex County Library branches, and these are safe, welcoming spaces for all. So please note you are always welcome to go to any library branch, and our staff would help you make the connection to Josh. If that is a more comfortable option for you to speak directly to staff. So what can we all do? Well, we can support the women in our lives. When speaking with our provincial and federal colleagues, ask them what is being done to invest in the safety of women and children. Demand that of them. If you believe a woman or a girl is in an unsafe environment, speak with her. Reach out and let her know she is not alone and that there is help. Share local resources with her. Understand the complexities of being in an abusive relationship. And if you believe that a woman is in immediate danger, call 911. If you are in need of support or assistance, please reach out to the community navigator at middlesex.ca or the Women's Rural Resource Center in Strathroy at 145 Beach Street. To access information on resources available through the Women's Rural Resource Center, please call 519-245-1526. Always know that there are resources out there and you will always be supported. November also provides opportunity to focus on men's health, both physical and mental. As the mother of 4 boys, now men, I am keenly aware of this focus. As I've mentioned many times during the stressful times we find ourselves living in, added attention to our mental health and well-being is paramount, especially for men. It seems that there is added pressure for men to have it all together and all figured out. And quite often, the struggles with anxiety and depression are battled alone. As the mother of a son who struggles daily with depression, I implore you to reach out to the men in your life and check in on them to ensure they are looking after their mental well-being. There are many resources available online through many organizations, so please take the time to do the research and find local resources just to support your male loved ones. At the very least, check in with them so they know they have a safe and supportive sounding board. Men must also be aware of their physical health. My father passed not from, but with prostate cancer, and I would encourage men to have frank discussions with their healthcare providers. And while there is controversy over the testing for prostate cancer, it is evident that prostate cancer can be cured when detected and treated early. When prostate cancer is detected early, tumors are more likely to respond to treatment. You are always your own health advocate. So to the men in your life, pick up the phone and speak to your provider about your health and your health concerns. Is there any disclosure for pecuniary interest? Seeing none. The agenda in front of us, I know we've all reviewed, so I do need a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as presented. Councillor Smybert and Councillor Clark. All in favor? And that's carried. We've got one set of minutes in front of us, and those are from the October 24th meeting. And if there needs to be no amendments or to those, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve those and to adopt the recommendations made by the committee of the whole. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor DeVete and Councillor McMillan. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. On to new items, or new business, excuse me. Action items. The first one is an award for request of tender for the supply and delivery of 1 2-wheel drive 3/4 ton pickup truck. And Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Warren. This continues our equipment purchases that we had tendered out this year. These are 2 trucks, this report and the next, that were previously tendered in 2022. And unfortunately, the supplier who quoted these vehicles had to withdraw. They did not have supply of these trucks to meet our deadline, so they had to pull out of that tender. So we re-tendered these 2 vehicles. The first one you can see here is truck 28. This is for a 2-wheel drive pickup truck. You can see we actually had 3 bids, which is encouraging. The low bid was supplied by, lose my mind here, Oxford Dodge Chrysler at $76,987 before taxes. And we're recommending that RFT be received and approved, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Chris. Are there any questions on the report just delivered? Okay, seeing none, then you've got a recommended motion in front of you, and I would ask for a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Grantham and Councillor Mayhew. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Continuing, Chris, this is another award for request of tender, this for a 4x4 3/4 ton pickup truck.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Warden. This is a truck that's used by one of our district foremen. So this is a truck that's used 365 days a year, hence the 4x4 requirement for this vehicle, as our foremen tend to use these trucks to respond during winter conditions. Again, we were happy to see 3 bids on this vehicle. The low bid was from Halliburton Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Limited, so a little bit further afield, at $67,777, excluding taxes. Again, we're recommending that this request for tender be approved. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments on this one? Okay, then a mover and a seconder for the recommended motion in front of you. Councillor Brennan and Councillor McGuire. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. On to inquiries. Any notices of motion? Councillor comments. Councillor Rock.
Thank you, Warden. I do have 2 items. The first one is with Remembrance Day coming up. As many people have seen, there's a lot of banners up in a lot of communities now of the veterans that we've had, and I would encourage people to have a look at those, to go for a walk. I know in Elsa Craig, there's over 70 banners up now. And I want to congratulate the people who've taken the time to do that. It's very important to the communities, and I just want to encourage everyone to go for a walk to our communities and look at these veterans and the banners. The second one I have, and we're just waiting for a little bit of paperwork to catch up for occupancy, is on November 18th, that we would invite everyone to come to Park Hill when they have a chance for the grand opening of the fire hall and the ambulance station. And we will get the particulars forwarded to everyone, but we're looking forward to that as well.
Okay, that's great. I know that we will all look forward to those details. This project is an exciting one for your community, and we will be happy to open up those doors, that's for sure. Any other councillor comments? Okay, seeing none, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to move us into the committee of the whole at 13 minutes after 1. Councillor Clark and Councillor Smybert. All in favor? And that's carried. We have no delegations, so we are right into our reports from county officers. And Paul, just if you want to speak to this one, obviously Bill is not with us today, but I think you still want us to receive this for information.
Through you, Madam Warden, yes, just to dispose of the agenda item, if we could receive the item on the agenda for information, I believe Chris and Bill will give an update at a future meeting.
Okay, so if you understand that, if I could get a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Smybert and Councillor Mayhew. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, the next one up is a report on the service overview and the operating pressures that are facing Middlesex London Paramedic Services. Again, Bill and Neil are not with us today, but Adam Bennett, the Deputy Chief, is going to be presenting. So appreciate you being with us, Adam, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Warden. There we go. So when we take a look at Middlesex London Paramedic Service as a whole, we operate 14 stations that are strategically located throughout Middlesex County and the City of London. We operate 24-hour ambulance services for both emergency and non-emergency care. 8 of those stations are in the City of London. The remaining stations are in Middlesex County itself. We employ over 450 highly trained professionals. Those include our paramedics, the supervisors, logistics technicians, quality investigations, management, as well as our educational and administrative support staff. That comprises of more than 80 different vehicles, including all of the ambulance and support vehicles. During our peak hours of operation, we deploy 36 ambulances within our communities. And of note is that we are projecting to respond to more than 120,000 calls this year in 23. More than 85% of the calls for service are within the city of London, and 83% of all of our patients that are transported to hospitals within the city center. Middlesex London Paramedic Service also operates neonatal pediatric intensive care transport unit for Southwestern Ontario. So this unit is responsible for all of Southwestern Ontario, and quite often, because it's 100% funded through the province, it is able to provide additional care within those areas. Over and above that, we also operate a community paramedic program, which is also 100% funded by the province. Some of the pressures that we're facing as a system revolve around call volume and complexity. We're seeing a changing in demographics as population increases, as well as the population aging. We experience a lack or the community experiences a lack of long-term care spaces. Hospital capacities are strained, resulting in patients and citizens living at home for longer periods of time, which puts additional pressures and burdens pressures into the 911 system. As well, the lack or decreased access to primary health care in the community also results in a lot of citizens relying on the hospital systems and the 911 system to be that source of primary care for them, which we see reflected in our call volumes and the complexity of the calls. So individuals that are remaining in their homes or in their communities, the nature of their calls are becoming more complex. So if we go to the next slide, please. So you can see that over the last few years that we have had significant growth in our call demands. One of the additional pressures that we have, a significant pressure, is the offload delays. To remind everybody, an offload delay, when paramedics arrive at emergency department, there's approximately 30 minutes of time for the patient to be received into the department, and the offload delay clock starts after that 30 minutes. That is a very significant pressure for Middlesex London Paramedic Service. It's a pressure across the province, but felt profoundly here in Middlesex. To date, or at the time of this report, we see 56% of the patients transported to LHSC experience offload delays, or have increased by 56%. And that's over and above the 159% that we increased previously. So to date, we've lost 4 24-hour ambulances each and every day to offload delays. 51% of all of the patients that we transport to LHSC actually experience an offload delay. And this is a pressure that we've been actively dealing with. As recent as of this morning, there was a delegation that was held with LHSC, which the warden led, and perhaps she would probably comment.
Sure. Thanks for that, Adam. So this morning, Adam joined myself. Paul came with me, and then we were joined by the mayor, Josh Morgan, and the CAO, or the city manager from the city of London, Lynn Livingstone, where we met with senior staff, senior officials, including the president of LHSC, to speak directly to the offload problem. We didn't really come, the county comes to a meeting like that with a couple of hats on, and we really approached it the same way the city was, as a funder, and how this is costing our communities, that it really is downloading. And so we expressed our concerns, and in return, I have to say that I feel cautiously optimistic that the hospital is certainly we're not telling them anything they don't already know, but they are taking some pretty bold measures to address the issues that are facing the emergency department. And as I know all of you can appreciate, it's not just an emergency room problem. It's a whole escalation of issues that are facing the hospital. And so they're looking at it from the whole of the organization. And as I say, they're implementing some pretty bold measures, and really looking for a culture change at the hospital. And MLPS meets weekly with LHSC, and they will continue to do so. But we've already committed to, in a month's time, the group will reconvene and we will be looking for some signs and data that will show that what they're implementing is we're seeing results and that it is sustainable. So cautiously optimistic. I think it was a pretty frank discussion that we had today. It was good to have the city there. Obviously, we're the service provider and a funder, but there's no question the city is the largest funder of the system. And they're at a point where, the pressures on their budget because of, land ambulance and other requests from other services, but they'll have to look at some of the services that they have, or not services, I would say, on their wish list that they won't be able to provide because of the pressures of that MLPS is bringing to the table. So as I say, look for more. We'll be able to bring an update in the December meeting as to how they've been doing, but cautiously optimistic after today's meeting.
So to build on the warden's comments, the next pressure that we tend to see is dispatch. What we notice is that a significant number of the calls that we are going out and responding to require lights and sirens response, so the highest level of emergency, and those are the ones that we're unable to defer. However, the number of ambulances that are returning with a critical call are extremely low. So this over triaging puts additional pressures into the 911 system and depletes the number of resources that are available. Middlesex on paramedic service, as well as Middlesex County, have been long pressing for control over the dispatch center, and that will give, and that's important in that it provides control over our resources on how they're deployed, but to take control of the calls at their entry point, giving the opportunity to potentially move to community paramedicine or an alternate resource that doesn't necessarily require a 911 response. Next slide. So some of the pressures that we're expecting to see and come up, again, we're entering the fall winter season, and we're expecting to see flu, RSV, and COVID. Those pressures, while COVID is behind us, the COVID virus is still very much in our communities, and we expect to see not only the pressures from increasing patients that are now seeking medical attention, but also the pressures that we will see into the workforces as well. Another pressure that we have is the dramatically changing prices post-COVID. For example, with using ambulances, for example, we've seen radical increases in costs of the vehicles. We also see a demand that outpaces the actual production of those vehicles. So we have difficulty in getting them. We're having to run fleets for longer periods of time. The next slide. So Middlesex on paramedic service, we continue to work collaboratively with the Ministry of Health, long-term care providers, and our representatives to look towards being able to deliver the right care to the right patient in the right place at the right time. And some of those improvements, if we go to the next slide, some of those things that we look at are models of care. So when we're looking at potentials to divert patients to an alternate type of care, we have had for a while now a mental health diversion model that was extremely successful in the community, and we've since launched this year an early adopter of a first response unit that will respond a single paramedic to a lower acuity call and engage with the patient and refer the patient to community paramedicine, keeping that patient from having to be transported to the emergency department to begin with, and keeps transporting ambulance available into the 911 system to be able to respond to those emergencies that we saw on the other side. This model, this early adopter, is being extremely successful so far. Each of these patients that's diverted from the emergency department has the potential to move significant hours back into the 911 system if we extrapolate that to the total number of hours that patient could have potentially been in the emergency department from the time that they were put into a hospital bed to the time that they were seen by a physician, and a decision was made to either admit the patient or discharge the patient, you could be looking between 12 and 16 hours. So that's 12 to 16 hours that could be returned back into the 911 system, because that bed is now available for another patient that paramedics brought in. So that we're seeing significant improvements, or significant improvement with those numbers with that. We also work through a quality assurance and improvement program, where we're identifying challenges and risks, looking for improvements that we can then provide improvements into our training, our education, and which would be driven through the information that we find through this process. We've been able to find some cost-effective measures to put into place with regards to the ambulance, with the way that medications are handled. So those are positives. We also look to our call volume on a regular basis, and we do an analysis of our call volume, our call patterns, our surge capacities as well as where the critical calls tend to happen in our communities. And we change and model our deployment based on those surges, so that we can maximize the deployment models that we have, so that we make sure that the resources are available and they're utilized to their fullest when they're out into the communities. One of the other initiatives that we have that we're looking to deploy soon is a single paramedic rapid response unit model, where they would respond specifically to obvious imminent threats to life, and that we're currently waiting from the Ministry of Health's final approval on that model. One of the items that we are also looking for as far as the improvement is operational control over the dispatch center. As we mentioned, that this would provide control over our own particular resources and provide us an opportunity to potentially divert away from an emergency department, as opposed to necessarily having to send a transporting ambulance to every single call. So in closing, Middlesex London Paramedic Service operates in a system where the outcomes are legislated and systemic pressures are controlled by other agencies. Addressing these pressures is paramount for maintaining stability and resilience in a rapidly evolving healthcare environment. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Adam. I should note that this was presented to the London City Council last week at their Strategic Priorities Committee. I think that's what they're called. So it is the committee of the whole, essentially, or all of them are on that. And so Bill and Neil presented, and I think we were there probably for a good hour and 15 minutes. There was a lot of discussion that came from the city, and I think it was maybe one of our more productive presentations to them on the stresses that are facing the system. So we didn't talk budget or dollars, but more about the system. So I think it was very well received. Any questions or comments from council on this report? Councillor DeVete.
Thank you, Warden, through you. Thank you, Adam, for the report. When I worked in business, charts that had a really steep slope going up to the right with respect to sales or volume or profits was a really good thing. It's hard to see that when it comes to providing service to residents who are ill or injured or needing service. So I think the work that you're doing and the solutions that you're coming up with and the workarounds and the advocacy that's happening is a really good thing. I'm encouraged by the work that's happening, and I know it's happening at other levels too. I just hope that everybody's going to be talking to everyone to make sure that those boundaries are going to be managed really well down the line, and that everybody has capacity to do the work that they're supposed to be doing, not really babysitting or hand-holding and doing other things that have got nothing to do with their training or interests. So just having said that, I was at the paramedic building when Minister Elliott announced the funding for the neonatal unit. And one of the first slides was 100% funding for that and 100% for the community paramedic program. What I don't recall, is that guaranteed ongoing, or Are we at risk here to have a plug pulled on us with respect to those special services? Or I don't recall. Could you just comment and refresh your memory, please?
So that funding is on an annual basis through a grant. That being said, it is tasked inordinately high. We were responsible for those calls in the community to begin with. They would always have fallen to Middlesex on paramedic service. The province has invested considerable time and money into these programs. There's units that respond from the centers are in Ottawa, Toronto, Hamilton, and London to provide that care for the province. With the time and the resources and the expansions that they have seen into those programs, I would find it hard to believe that they would actually pull those, because they're providing a higher level of care to some of the most vulnerable patients, and the hospital systems that also are involved in that are feeling a lot of relief within their systems as well. So especially some of the tertiary hospitals that are in the outerlying communities with very sick children, getting them into those centers where they actually need to be, getting them into children's or to sick kids, has a massive impact to those communities. So I would anticipate that the province would continue to fund it.
Thank you. That's reassuring.
Any other questions or comments from council on the report that's just been presented? Okay, thanks very much, Adam. Appreciate that. Appreciate you filling in. That was great. If I can get a mover and a seconder to receive that report for information, please. Councillor Mayhew and Councillor DeVite. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on, we're going to ask Dirk to come through because we've got a official plan amendment update for Thames Centre.
Thank you. Council will recall, of course, with the delay in the county's official plan being approved, we've had a backlog of local official plan amendments. We're working through these basically at every meeting. We've got Thames Centre. The next one will be Strathroy-Caradoc, and then we'll sort of be caught up. But this is, and as you know, municipalities are required by the Plan Act to review official plans. And this is the general official plan amendment update for Thames Centre's OP. It does a lot of changes. It touches on provincial interests in the new, the 2020 provincial policy statement. It addresses the county's official plan as modified, adds in additional residential units, farm labor policies, or housing for farm labor, and those sort of things. So it's a fairly broad official plan amendment. We did undertake, as part of the county's review and agency ministry circulation, we didn't get a lot of comments. We did get a couple that resulted in modifications, including from the Chippewa, the Thames First Nation. During the local process, there was a fair amount of public input received, and my report gives a real high level summary of it. And then we also at the county level did receive one submission directly, and that's attached in your package. I won't go through the policy review in as much detail as I have maybe on the last OPs. You've heard me before. In the end, I am satisfied, though, that subject to modifications, it does meet the policy tests of both the county's official plan and the provincial policy statement. As happens in a lot of these files, there are proposed modifications, and they were identified through our review. There's some typo type things. There are some maps where there were some items inadvertently omitted just in the actual official plan amendment. So we're just fixing those things. As I mentioned, there were some modifications suggested or recommended in response to comments from Chippewas, the Thames First Nation, and some more sort of technical things. So I have reviewed all of those modifications with the municipality, and they are in agreement with those, with the one exception though. And so my report does highlight that. At the outset of the process, this is only a general official plan amendment. It's not a general official plan amendment and a municipal comprehensive review, because at the outset of the process, the municipality determined that they had enough lands, both employment and residential, et cetera, already designated for the 25-year planning horizon. Having said that, the amendment that has been adopted does add a 20-hectare property, and there's a figure attached to the modifications just pointing that property out for your consideration. So in order to designate those lands or such lands, the PPS requires the demonstration of need. So you have to be able to demonstrate for the 25-year planning horizon that you need those lands. based on your calculations. That hasn't occurred. And so therefore, I'm not in a position to recommend approval of that particular property. And therefore, a modification is included that would essentially defer, council would approve everything else. It would defer the decision for those lands. And then there's certainly signals from the province, as you know, about changing policies in terms of how we evaluate and whether we go beyond the 25 years, et cetera. So if it was deferred, if the province does make those changes, then council, without having to restart the process, council could make a further consideration for those lands. I do note, though, in my report, just based on their location, they're right at the 401 interchange. They are surrounded by lands that are either already designated and or being developed for employment uses. So I certainly, as a planner, understand why these lands over the plan at some point would be sort of ideal lands for employment uses. So I guess in summary, based on that, subject to the modifications, I am comfortable that it is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms with the county's official plan and would represent good land use planning, and therefore recommending approval subject to modifications.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Dirk. Appreciate it. Comments or questions on the report in front of you? Councillor Smybert?
I don't have any comments or questions, but I do want to move a resolution, so I don't know whether you want me to do that now or wait until there's been an opportunity for questions.
Why don't we just see if there's any questions or comments first, and then we'll go from that. Are there any comments or questions in front of you? Or from you, I should say. Councillor Robb.
Thank you. Through the warden, Dirk, regarding this one particular piece of property that you're talking about, you're recommending to possibly defer that portion of it. Is that correct?
Yes, through the warden, my recommendation would be to approve everything, and then it's a deferral just for that one area. And then that leaves it sort of as an open file, if you will, and then it could be brought back before county council in the future.
Any other comments or questions? Hey, Councillor Smybert.
Thank you, Warden. I would like to move that we approve the staff recommendation with the exception of including the Westchester Bourne lands as rural industrial. And the clerk's been kind to provide a resolution for consideration. Thank you.
Can I get a seconder for that? And then I can open it up for discussion. Councillor McGuire. Discussion on that. Do you want to speak to that?
Yes, if I can. So I understand the planner's recommendation in terms of, he's got provincial policy and legislation to abide by, and I do respect that. I do want to indicate that this parcel of land has a bit of a history. It has been designated industrial for years, and it was just the current official plan amendment that down designated those lands without direct notice to the property owner. And as the director of planning has indicated, this location is right adjacent to the 401. It's amongst other industrially designated properties, which we think in keeping with a consistent approach to planning, that these lands should also be designated industrial. And then also, given the recent Volkswagen announcement, it's clear that there'll be other potential industrial opportunities. And we want to make sure that we're positioned to take advantage of that. We're dry industrial. We don't have services. And I understand what the director of planning is saying is that it can be deferred until such time as the provincial policy statement has been approved. We don't know how long that's going to be. It could take months, but it could take longer than that. So I would appreciate your support to include these lands as part of the approval of the Thames Centre official plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smybert. Comments? Councillor Clark.
Through the warden to Councillor Smybert, can you just back up a little bit and provide a little more conversation as to how this property flip-flopped from what it was to what they were proposing now?
Thank you. And while I was not on council when this happened, it's my understanding and talking to the planner at Thames Centre that it was designated as industrial in a former official plan, just the recent one. I'm not sure the reasons why, and maybe the director of planning does have some background on that, but it was down designated and is now not industrial in the current official plan.
Thank you.
Dirk, did you have anything to add to that?
I was around in those that time. It was in through the warden. It was 2015. It was the last it was the municipality's last comprehensive review. And for those that were around then, it was the municipality was consolidating employment lands at Putnam and here along the 401, sort of taking designations from outside of Thorndale and other areas and moving it next to the 401. When the municipality did that, the math didn't support the inclusion of all of the lands. And so the municipality was asked to put forward candidate lands to down designate essentially. And this was one of those properties that was identified. So it was through a previous approval of an official plan, I think in 2015.
Thank you for that. Did you have follow-up, Councillor Clark, or anything? Are you're good? Any other comments or questions? Councillor Grantham, then Councillor DeVete.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, mine's going to be a question, an educational question from me to the director. If this land is designated agriculture, an opportunity does present itself. Is it an onerous task to have it moved to industrial?
That's a difficult question to answer. Some applicants think everything planning is onerous. Yeah, they would, if someone wanted to change the designation for these lands, they would essentially have to satisfy the municipal comprehensive review tests that enough land is not designated to meet the 25-year planning horizon under the current PPS. The current PPS, the intention really is that the municipality identify the areas they're going to grow as opposed to individual applicants coming in with a particular property in mind.
Do you have follow-up, Councillor Grantham, or do you want me to come back to you? Okay, Councillor DeVete.
This is just how does land get, how did someone determine that property right next to the highway that is surrounded by industrial is a good piece of property to take out to reduce the amount of industrial lands that are designated in the municipality? Is there a rule about that? Or, I mean, I don't see a school going up in there. It just makes no sense to me that it wouldn't be included. There is no rule. Well, I don't know. That's what I'm wondering. How does that happen?
Through the warden, it's always difficult to look at past planning decisions and try to figure out what people are thinking. But at that time, it was the municipality, and I don't know if it went to council, if it was out of staff. They used a planning consultant at that time. They did come back with certain lands, and I don't know exactly what criteria they used.
Councillor McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Warden. My question is a risk type question. Should we proceed one way or the other? So it seems to me the director is saying, let's defer it and kind of hold it in abeyance. The motion on the floor that we're looking at right now is let's do this and redesignate it. If we move on that, what risk are we potentially creating for ourselves?
Who wants to take that one? I guess the risk is always an appeal.
Yeah, difficult question for a planner to answer, but certainly any decisions on official plan amendments are subject to appeal one way or the other, I guess I would say.
Hey, I think I saw Councillor Clark's hand up and then Councillor Rob.
Yeah, through the warden, just if you could clarify where we are here in the process. So we have a resolution on the floor from Councillor Smybert, and was there a seconder?
Yes, there was. Councillor DeVete seconded it.
Okay, all right. So I guess I look at this from 10,000 feet above the earth and say, you know, this parcel is very small. It's strategically located. And I think from an economic development perspective, this would be in keeping with the vision of where this county should be moving.
Thank you for that. Councillor Rob.
Thank you. That Councillor Clark, you pretty much said what I was thinking as well.
Thank you. Councillor Grantham, did you have any other thing that you wanted to add?
Nope, I got what I needed. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so the resolution or the motion's on the floor. Can we read it again just for refresher?
Through you, Madam Warden. The Middlesex County Council strike the following words from the preliminary decision with respect to amendment number 27 to the Thames Center official plan. Save and accept the following, which is deferred for further consideration under section 1734B of the Planning Act. 1, lands lying within part of lots 23 and 24, concession 1 SRT east of Westchester Bourne, as shown on figure 1 attached. That amendment number 27 to the Thames Center official plan be approved with amended modifications, and that staff be directed to circulate a notice of decision as required by the Planning Act, and that the notice of decision indicate that Middlesex County considered all written submissions received on this application, the effect of which helped to make an informed recommendation and decision.
Okay. Thank you for that, Paul. One last call for questions or comments. That was moved by Councillor Smybert and seconded by Councillor DeVete. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, Dirk, proposed plan of subdivision, sticking in Thames Center. This is the Donnybrook Industrial Subdivision.
Thank you. Through the warden, and not too far away from the site of the previous discussion. This is a 22-hectare property in an area that's designated and zoned for basically dry industrial purposes. The plan of subdivision would create 8 blocks for industrial uses, for future industrial use. And as usual, the location map, the local planning report, et cetera, are attached. We did undertake an agency circulation, and the draft plan conditions would address any comments that were raised by the municipality, the county engineer, the Ministry of Transportation, and also the Conservation Authority related to stormwater. I would say during the local process, there was a fair amount of public input received. And if you're familiar with the area, the Donnybrook, or was it Silver Moon Industrial Park is next to it, which is a combined residential and employment area. And so the initial plan proposed to connect those and have sort of an integrated development, which caused a lot of concern for residents in that area. Through the local process, the plan was revised to remove that connection and address those comments in that way. So as I said, the local planning report is attached. In the end, I am satisfied that it meets the test of the provincial policy statement, the county's official plan, and subject to the conditions, I am recommending approval.
Thank you very much, Dirk. Are there any comments or clarifications, questions on this report? Okay, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder for the recommended motion in front of you. Councillor Grantham and Councillor Clark. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, Kara. You have got some information on the CGLCC, the Rainbow Registered Program, and I'll turn it over to you.
I do. Thank you, Warden. To Council, Middlesex County has taken a progressive and supportive stance in presenting our workplace and communities as welcoming, diverse, and inclusive. This report today builds upon this to extend inclusion beyond the social sense to the economic development perspective. Operating in Canada today are over 100,000 businesses owned and operated by individuals who identify as LGBT+. These businesses generate over $22 billion in economic activity and employ over 435,000 Canadians. Despite this significant economic impact, these businesses and LGBT+ persons continue to face bias and barriers. To support this sector and to recognize their contributions to the Canadian economy, the Canadian Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce has been established. The CGLCC has created an accreditation program called Rainbow Registered, which acknowledges Canadian businesses, organizations, and governments who demonstrate their commitment to inclusivity and acceptance. To date, nearly 300 organizations across Canada have joined. Accredited members of the Rainbow Registered Program benefit from guidelines that provide information, advice, and resources that LGBT plus customers feel welcome and accepted, and will be able to demonstrate and market themselves as businesses as safe destinations for the LGBT plus community. By becoming Rainbow Registered, Middlesex County would identify itself as an inclusive workplace and a community partner that supports LGBT plus. Registration with the Rainbow Registered Program holds specific significance for the Middlesex County Economic Development and Tourism Department, especially when approaching community organizations to promote similar registration. This registration would serve as an embodiment of leading by example. Promoting an inclusive environment is pivotal for tourism, as it appeals to a wider spectrum of tourists, especially those in the LGBT plus community seeking safe and welcoming destinations. The department's advocacy for rainbow registration among its local businesses as the region's destination marketing organization underpins its dedication to fostering an inclusive environment. Having the county itself obtain this registration sends a message of support and aligns with the core strategic priorities of Middlesex County. Those strategic priorities are identified for you at the end of this report and include all three as noted: cultivating community vitality, strengthening our economy, and promoting service excellence. Nationally, Canada is steering towards more LGBT plus inclusive spaces. By aligning with the Rainbow Registered Initiative, Middlesex County positions itself as a leader, emphasizing the strategic importance of inclusivity. The cost of registration for organizations with 101 plus employees is $525 per year for a 3-year, $525 per year for a 3-year tenure, alongside a one-time sign-up fee of $274, which includes the assessment of our organization as being worthy of this accreditation. The Economic Development and Tourism budget can accommodate this expenditure. And the recommendation is that this be received for your information and that we be directed to register Middlesex County in the program.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Kara. I think that this is an incredibly important report in front of us and recommendation, and I want to congratulate you for bringing it to council. So thank you for that. Questions or comments on the report and recommendation in front of you? You've got a recommended motion in front of you, and I would ask for a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Smybert and Councillor Mayhew. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. As I say, I think that this is an incredibly important initiative. And I think that this is probably a big step for Middlesex County. And again, thanks, Kara, for bringing it to council. And thank you to my colleagues for moving forward on that. On to correspondence and information items. The Ontario Land Tribunal Appeal of Middlesex Centre Official Plan Amendment number 59, the Municipal Comprehensive Review and General Official Plan Update file number 39-MC-OPA 59. I don't know, Dirk, I mean, it's all there in the report. Did you have anything to add to that?
Maybe just briefly to comment, it certainly is more appeals than we would typically get in 5 years. So there will be some challenges just to deal with that when we get next year for legal and planning.
Thank you for that. 9.D.2 is final approval of the 48 Carroll Street West Plan of Condominium, file 39T-SC-CDM 2301 in Strathroy, Caradoc. Final approval of Timberwalk, the Sifton Plan of Subdivision Phase 5, File 39T-MC 1901 in Middlesex Center. City of London Staff Report to Community and Protective Services Committee for October 24th, 2023. Housing Stability Services Rent Geared to Income Waitlist Placement Ratio. Councillor Grantham.
Thank you, Warden. I may ask Cindy to jump in if I stumble here. This is actually a significant change to the way that housing occurs, not just in the city, but in the county through London Middlesex Housing. There's a couple of pressures that I know London Middlesex Housing is facing. One is obviously financial, but the other is the pressures that the tenants are feeling. So what this does, it for 1 year period, it switches the ratio. So the ratio before was skewed towards urgent care with a smaller number to those in need or chronological. So they've asked for 1 year period to switch the ratio to 80-20. I think what has happened is London Middlesex Housing has realized they're not supportive housing. They don't have the tools necessary to provide supportive housing. They made a presentation to London City Council, the chair Phil Squire and the CEO Paul Chisholm. But I think one of the key KPIs that they use in London Middlesex Housing is vacant units. And with the constant turnover with those requiring more supports, there's more vacant units. So what they're hoping to do is to bring some stability to housing and try to support those who are, for lack of a better word, in less need. But I'll ask Cindy if you have anything you want to add.
Thanks for the warden. I think council, you did a great job describing that and outlining the changes that the City of London is proposing. I would say that I believe, and the clerk can confirm, but the City of London is coming December 7th to talk about housing. So I think it would be a great chance for council to ask questions for the City of London about these changes and some of the positive outcomes we expect from these changes. However, if you want to provide some comments to me, I can definitely reach out to the City of London, have conversations and get back to you. And happy to answer any more questions.
Just want to add that they're scheduled for the next meeting, November 21st. Get those questions in early. Was there any comment or questions or anything on that? Okay. Assessment of Bill 134, the Affordable Homes and Good Jobs Act. Letter from WOWC dated October 20th, 2023 to MMAH regarding strong mayor powers. Minutes of the October 23rd meeting of the MLPS Authority Board. Minutes of the October 24th, 2023 meeting of the Library Board. And if I could ask for a mover and a seconder to receive those items for information, please. Councillor McGuire and Councillor Roth. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We have two bylaws in front of us, clerk. Oh, that's right. We have to rise from the committee of the whole. That's right. Exactly. I need a mover and a seconder so that we rise from the committee of the whole at 1:59 p.m. Councillor McMillan and Councillor McGuire. All in favor? That's carried. Now we have two bylaws.
You, Madam Warden, bylaw number 7255, a bylaw designating prescribed rates of speed on county roads number 1 to 81 inclusive. And bylaw number 7256, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the November 7th, 2023 meeting of County Council.
Okay, thank you. A mover and a seconder for the first and second reading. Councillor Mayhew and Councillor DeVete. All in favor? Carried. And for the third and final reading, please. Councillor Clark and Councillor McMillan. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. You've got the dates for the upcoming meetings ahead of us. Of course, a reminder that our inaugural meeting has been moved up to Tuesday, the 28th. Also, the Warden's Banquet is the 18th, and if you haven't RSVP'd, if you could let Rebecca know, that would be great. With that in mind, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to adjourn this meeting at 2 p.m. Councillor McGuire and Councillor Rock. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.